Tendremos la intervención de ATOS con uno de los temas de más interés en la actualidad, The Power of the Edge and in the Cloud, a cargo de Brian Ray y Paulo Pereira. Brian Ray es director general y líder de práctica horizontal de ML/AI, de ciencia de datos para Maven Wave Partners. Ray dirige la misión del grupo de resolver problemas analíticos complejos para las principales empresas de todo el mundo a través del poder de la ciencia de datos con habilitación en la nube. Antes de Maven Wave, Brian tiene 20 años de experiencia práctica en ingeniería alrededor de las ciencias. Es un gran estratega, formador de equipos e influyente tecnólogo superior. Tiene una amplia experiencia en la entrega ágil de la ciencia de datos, desde la ideación, descubrimiento, la viabilidad, la exploración, el modelado, la ingeniería y la arquitectura, hasta la integración práctica y el despliegue de las mejores soluciones de su clase. Paulo Pereira es el vicepresidente y director de innovación de Edge to Cloud para aplicaciones, inteligencia artificial y datos de ATOS. En su función es responsable de llevar innovaciones a nuestra base de clientes, desarrollar y mejorar los servicios existentes y llevar al mercado nuevas ofertas de productos y soluciones. Estos productos y ofertas permiten a los clientes de ATOS continuar su transformación en alineación con la hoja de ruta de ATOS para 2025. Es un ejecutivo senior con una trayectoria exitosa como líder empresarial e innovador tecnológico en el espacio de datos. Análisis. Paulo tiene una amplia experiencia como experto de datos desarrollando estrategias para la monetización de datos, nuevas tecnologías alrededor de inteligencia artificial, ML, IoT y blockchain, incluidas varias patentes e investigación aplicada. En sus puestos anteriores en IBM y GE fue responsable de varios productos analíticos a gran escala galardonados y ayudó a compañías Fortune 50 como JPMC, Walmart, Honeywell, Amex, Target, ING, Santander y HSBC para que desarrollaran e implementaran sistemas masivamente paralelos para el análisis de datos. Implementan estrategias de datos y definen procesos para una gobernanza adecuada. Bienvenido, Paulo. Bienvenido, Brian. El tiempo es de ustedes.
Gracias. Thank you. Thank you for having us, first of all. SOF 2020, I know these are strange times, and thank you very much to the organizers for having us. I know there was a lot of work that went into this, and we're really excited to talk to you today about what we do at ATOS and Maven Wave. First off, let's talk about the status quo of information today. We're an organization that's customer obsessed. We're always out to help them build solutions. The innovation oftentimes is both hybrid of old technology and new technology. And we blend that digital experience to move organizations forward. The data drives a lot of these solutions, and we're very close to it, and we enable it in the cloud. Those innovations drive alternative products. It has the ability to make business more agile. It can help things in business like operational efficiency and reduce risk. All of our solutions are cloud powered. They are hybrid cloud powered, and we're going to talk a bit more about that. But we also embrace on-premise technology, as you'll see through this presentation. The story is companies must innovate. And without innovation today, they will be left behind. We're enabling that, and we do that as a SWAT team style, a team that comes in and we help innovate, and we bring solutions from start, from idea to enablement to even maintenance. Cloud is a big deal. $500 billion spent in 2023. 80% of workloads have not moved to the cloud yet, but 84% of all enterprise have a multi-cloud strategy already. 60% of companies will use an MSP by 2022. It's coming, it's there for a lot. It can't be ignored. 81% of enterprises will use at least 2 or more cloud providers. 83% think workloads will move freely between clouds. And 86% are using some form of Kubernetes for containerization and movement to a multi-cloud strategy. It allows you to prevent for your clients lock-in from a particular vendor. It allows you to utilize the best of class of services on each cloud. And it allows you to find cost savings through discounts and other strategies. Paulo.
Thanks, Brian. And like Brian said, the world is changing. There's a lot of adoption in the cloud today, and most of it's going to start in hybrid and going to stay hybrid for a long time. So what we have done within ATOS, we have traditionally been responsible to build and maintain systems in a data center. What's the change that's happening right now is all this needs to move and embrace the public cloud. So we are going through a large transformation. We announced recently our One Cloud vision that really focuses on helping clients to their journey. That includes all the consulting. There's a lot of decisions, design, business case to be made, and where and how applications should move to the cloud. Helping with that move, with that transformation, and really, applying end-to-end capabilities to help the customers navigate this journey that's going to take a long time. And of course, security is of paramount importance because not only it's a new model that can be improved, now the data is going outside of the barriers or the bounds of their own data center. So there's always a concern. So everything that we do has security embedded into it, and including some of the hybrid model that we have been discussing in the context of predictive maintenance with edge, because the edge is not even inside the data center anymore. So it's very important that we have that secure cloud journey well defined. And the subject that we want to talk about today is how to leverage all of this for something that most companies, especially on the industrial side, are trying to achieve today, which is predictive maintenance. Maintenance, it's in the industrial world, is a necessary, fact of life. And most of the problems that arise from maintenance are related to unplanned, all the costs associated with that, all the downtime, all the costs with replacements of parts that we wanted to optimize and minimize. So the first thing that we need to do is connect to the equipment. This is data that either doesn't exist or hasn't been available for analysis. So you really need to have the ability to connect to basically anything, anywhere. And sometimes those assets are remote. So you have to have an ability to wirelessly connect to that. And with Advantage 5G, it's the ability to be able to do this is increasing a lot. And because you're talking about a very diverse set of systems, you really need to have the ability to be able to connect all of them, but decode that data in what we call a code-free device collection, because you want to be able to use the knowledge of the equipment manufacturers and the people that work with it, and not having a developer managing this. And once that data goes into a central system, you can use data science and all the different capabilities that we have in AI today to analyze that data, find patterns, find different elements of explanation of what's happening to the data, So you can define maintenance to alert maintenance to the crew. And what's interesting about this particular process is a mechanic that's going to be working on a big machine doesn't really understand all of this. So he really needs to be translated to what decisions, if you really wanted to drive an outcome in this space, those alerts need to be defined in a way that somebody working on the machine knows what to do. Do we need to replace it? Do we need to monitor it? Do we need to test it? So the decisions need to be driven by the data that was found, but it needs to be in a language that that person would understand. And for us to understand what outcome the company really is concerned about, we discussed about going through the journey in the cloud, we really need to understand what is the state of readiness of that particular business, both on the technical side and on the business side, to understand, is the data available, is the knowledge available, are the systems that are going to be consuming this data ready to handle not only the volume or the complexity of what's happening. So we really start with a problem definition, which is usually related to a business result. Some of the customers that we have been helping, they have very specific financial models associated with availability of the assets that they're dealing with. So we have to factor that in understanding the costs and the elements of data that we're going to need to achieve that particular result. And then establish a very efficient and a very repeatable process to go through the data, create a data cycle around the analysis, and not only with the data that exists today, but also in the future. Because one of the things that always happens in this space is we always learn about different elements or different uses of that data. In one case, we started with just monitoring the information for anomalies, and now we're going through a complete set of automation that would create work orders for the maintenance teams to be able to act. And having this vision associated with the data allows us to expand the value. And at the end, we really want this to be pervasive across the company and allowing all the processes and people involved to be adapt to this new reality. One of the things that we have done, which is very innovative in this space, is as you can see, it can become very complex to be able to build this type of capability. So we decided to automate as much as we can. So in this particular world of IoT, because you have a very diverse set of capabilities or assets you need to connect to, it could be a controller, it could be a video camera from a surveillance, it could be a connected car, it could be any sensor that you can put in your home. The ability that we can connect to either digital or analog signals, it's important. So the way we develop this is we have this idea of a micro edge where all this data is collected next to the asset. This is a fairly small box that's enabled for any type of wireless connectivity from LoRa to 5G. And that data collection is done automatically. So there's no code. Is really optimized for that particular type of asset and sensor. And then we move that into what we call an edge server. And edge servers are very different from what you can see in the traditional data center, because this needs to actually exist in the open. The box that we have, the form factor, allows us to put this outdoors. We can mount this on the top of a pole in a parking lot so we can monitor cars coming and going for safety and security. You can put this box inside a factory floor and not worry about having a mini data center in the location to be able to do all this work. And again, the level of automation that we put in with Kubernetes, with the modern data models that we have in the cloud, allows us not only to effectively manage this, but to be able to connect this to all the hyperscalers. So this automation of the data collection goes straight from the asset itself all the way to the cloud, where this data is made available in what we call a multi-cloud storage. So any application that you have running on Azure or Google or AWS will be able to see this data and take value out of it. Or if the customer feels more comfortable, this data could stay in the data center. The same model applies. The direct delivery and the data loss prevention is embedded into any path you want.
And then the question comes in, where do you get started with that? What Paulo showed there is a pretty mature system that takes into account very specific environment. A lot of times our journey into the cloud starts with some data identification, a quick start migration, and then some sort of analytical pilot. The output that you get out of a low barrier entry like that, you get a scope definition document, you get a target data model, and you get an approach document, training materials, and an executive summary out of that. So that a lot of places are asking, how do we get started? What is that? From the data science perspective as well, having the conversation about how AI and machine learning can solve some of those business problems that the C-suite is often trying to have solved, and potentially doing a POC or a pilot around some of that data as well, has been a strategy that's really worked well for our group. In the scope of what we do in there, it can be as simple as a predictive model predicting a category or a number, or it could be some sort of insights. So in the case of IoT, which we're speaking of here, an outlier or an anomaly detection will fit into one of those buckets oftentimes. And then when you build these on top of each other, you get into the solution space. And the solution space is really hot right now because it can solve some pretty complex business problems. It's a bigger investment, obviously, to do that. But the areas that we're excelling quite a bit is things like contact center AI. That's your call center, and converting that voice data to text and doing analytics on it about voice of the customer. Or document understanding, which is takes PDFs or other documents and converts them to text and uses natural language processing to figure out what data it holds, or recommendation systems, of course, knowledge-based systems. And then, providing some sort of interface, as Paulo could tell you, we could tell you about a couple of use cases, like we make dashboards oftentimes for sensor readouts and things like that. Being able to integrate the human into the process as well at the same time has shown great value, immediate value, in fact. A couple of case studies, a couple of examples of places we've done this in the past. There's a large organization, membership organization, AAA, that we work with various levels, but building a E2E data warehouse solution on the Google Cloud Platform is an example of that. Or for the beverage maker Anheuser-Busch, doing a full integrated solution with maps and places and market data, and be able to use data science and machine learning to identify custom segmentation, or using managed data and ML to incorporate demographic, geographic, and financial attributes to an algorithm to identify things like fraud. So the point here is that some of these technologies that we're using, very applicable to your IoT space, but very similar technologies are able to do a lot of other things, from everything from customer segmentation, as we see here, or identification of fraud. How do you go about it from a solution design approach? We talk about the operational readiness of the client. Sometimes the client isn't on the cloud already, or even if they're on premise, they don't have the base building blocks needed in order to handle that sort of data. And so thinking about that, what is the current status quo and building out a foundational asset to do that. And then, of course, talent, bringing in the right technologists, the right experts, the right SMEs into an engagement so that they can add value to that engagement and shed light on some of the best practices. It could be governance, it could be security, it could be engineering, it could be data science. So it's assembling the right tool sets for that particular problem, and being able to have them contribute to building out a solution. And finally, having the structure in place so that you have the change management needed. If every time you introduce technology like this, there is a little bit of change. The way that it should work, oftentimes it should be man and the machine instead of man versus the machine. So you want to think about how you can use this technology to make your life better. And I think Paulo mentioned something about the engineers receiving insights into the machine. That's really where we want to be. We want to be able to provide more visibility into what's going on. We want to add more transparency to the data. We want to understand it better. We don't want to replace the human. We want to work with the human, make their lives better and easier, more effective. From a delivery approach, it's really a three-step thing. It's a definition of building that strategy and then doing a quick pilot and be able to focus on an end-to-end for that pilot or that POC or proof of value, some people call it, but making it real. And then there's the idea of scale. If you do it for one factory, or if you do it for one attraction, or if you do it for one office, the question is can that technology be reapplied multiple times with just some basic configuration changes so that it can scale throughout an existing business or over time as a business grows? It doesn't have that ability to be a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year investment on technology versus something that's short-lived. So all these things are built on top of each other. The definition of keeping that in mind, the pilot of building it correctly in an agile way, and then being able to scale it so that it scales with the organization without too much incremental investment on top of it. I mentioned Agile a second ago, and just real quick how we use Agile. I'm sure many of you or most of you already know this, but just a little thought about how an Agile engagement model might work is, let's just say these are months or weeks. Let's just say these are weeks. A week for setup, a week for getting the data ready, and doing also exploratory analysis on it, a week for iteratively finding the best solution, which would be in a data science sense, it'd be a model that does whatever you need it to do, then putting it in production for a week, and then you better customize it as you have the human in the loop. And especially at the end of an engagement for us, but all throughout the engagement, always identifying back with the business, always being able to show the value of each step along the way in the form of readouts, of showing value in the data, and the ability to have that conversation to allow even a business audience to ask the question, what value is this bringing to the organization throughout? Paulo?
And we have a few examples of where we successfully, apply this model. And, like Brian said, we spend a lot of time with the client defining not only the objectives, but who needs to be in the loop from the human side. And that part of the program is very, very important, because if you don't have feedback from the folks that understand the business, understand the data, the systems, but also the executives that are the sponsors of the project, you really cannot make this fast progress. So when we define on the pilot side, it's not just to prove the technology works, but to prove that the value it's there. In this particular case, this is a large media company. They run amusement parks. And in fact, with COVID, it has been a very trying year for all those operators. But the value that we have produced with this capability is so great that they decided to expand and accelerate the projects that we have in this space with them. And the reason for that is because right in the beginning, we had financial targets to achieve. Instead of just setting up, we need to have this many sensors, this much data, this many models. The whole point of the project was to be able to create financial return. And we had a target in the beginning of the project to be able to improve availability of their attractions by 7 to 8%. We're currently at 10. And when we started the project, the whole point was to prove the value, if you will, with the pilot. And once that was defined, the customer turned around and wanted to scale to 10 attractions. And then their CEO actually wants to go to 50 as soon as possible. And we only were able to do that because we followed the process that Brian just described, where when we design anything from the data collection to how this data goes into an environment that we can do analysis, to the dashboards, to how this data is analyzed, is all designed for scale. Not just, again, in terms of sensors. We have more than 100 million sensors in this design, but we also want to be able to scale the value. So when you go from one machine and one process to another, you don't want to redesign everything. Of course, the benefits and the analysis is going to be unique, but the processes behind, especially the communication with the client, needs to be repeatable.
And just to pile on top of that a little bit, the human in the loop aspect of this, can Paulo speak to that?
And this is, the idea of the human in the loop is really interactive, right? Because especially with science, you're always learning, right? There are hypotheses and assumptions that we do in the beginning. They're either validated or you learn new things. And in this case, which is interesting about those very complex systems, is that the data itself and the analysis that you do are as important as the feedback that we get from the individuals that understand the machines, that have worked with those machines for sometimes decades. And in fact, improving in the knowledge that you have with the data that you find to prove to somebody that has maintained a system for 25 years. You really need to have something that adds value to their day. So of course the objective is that your roller coaster doesn't break, and whoever's having fun, it's not affected by it. But behind the scenes, you have a very complex set of capabilities of maintenance crews, parts that need to be available, maintenance windows that have been shrinking over time because of complexity and other factors. And all of this learning not only needs to be embedded in operational processes, but can be feedback into what we call innovation. So we can redesign not only the systems, but also how you operate them. So you can make the process work fully. And in fact, in this particular case, we are in fact talking to the manufacturer of the attraction. So instead of just getting the value out of running it and managing it, what we're focusing on is to have a change in how those systems are designed based on the learnings that we have found, and be able to offer the clients much better value out of the system. And not all projects need to be a very complex system. You have situations, for instance, in this case, in the United States, every facility that houses food or anything that's consumable by a human needs to be monitored for pests. Of course, you don't want diseases and other problems happening in an outbreak because, a rodent or any other pest was near the food that somebody's going to eat later on. And that's a mandatory regulatory capability that every company should have. So if you have a very large facility, you need to monitor in hard to reach areas because that's where the animals would be. You have to send crews, dispatch crews, to be able to monitor traps and monitor how this, basically the safety of this environment. What we were able to do with this wireless data collection from sensors is now, instead of dispatching, we have alerts that are associated with movement and action into some of those traps, and you only dispatch the crew now if you actually have anything to verify. And this led to, again, from the business results perspective, a reduction in cost by 80% because now we have to have less staff, less time crawling through places, trying to find what's happening in that situation, but still focusing on complete compliance with FDA regulations. So again, sometimes the value that you get by collecting this data, analyzing in the cloud, and creating the same types of models can create a huge benefit without a lot of complexity.
So here we're talking about some innovation about smart monitoring in the oil and gas industry. And the situation here is that these devices are geographically hard to reach by technology. And the question is can we build a model, a predictive model that sits on the device, but have it yet managed by the cloud? And what that means is that there needs to be a way for the cloud to control and give that dashboard we mentioned and that insight that we mentioned to the business, but yet have it be distributed various ways. And there's many ways technology to do that. But the prediction itself needs to sit close to the machine. So with that idea we mentioned of one cloud and things like Kubernetes, which a term I mentioned earlier that allows us to take containerize, to put pieces of functionality of technology and bring it to the person or to the device or to the edge, if you will, and allows you to then take that and allows you to build it and then have it operate there while sending data back upstream to the cloud. So it can be collected and you can figure out what holistically is going on in that space. Similarly, everyone today, I'm sure, is using hand sanitizer everywhere. What we've done with the hand sanitizer is we've added cameras to them. We've added temperature checks. So when you put your hand under the device, it'll check your temperature automatically. Added video signage, so you can have ads and other technology sit on the device, and other ways to communicate with that technology, so that if you picture this in a public setting, you can have a little bit better understanding if someone has a temperature, automatically, or you can have better understanding of, who generally is doing that. Security is extremely important as well in these systems. So the infrastructure that needs to go behind that and just the privacy control of it and everything else needs to be considered as well. But having that technology at hand in these public spaces is a great advantage because they're connected now. So you have it. Also, just simply knowing if the device is going to run out of soap. Sounds silly, but those things too are extremely important. Fast forward, what we're thinking about, and this hasn't really gotten there yet, but what if we put these in your home? What if we put one at your doorway and your children come in the door from school and they don't use it, but it recognizes their face that they walk by? Imagine if on your mobile device that you're the mom and the dad and you get a notification that Susie or Tommy or Pedro or whoever didn't use the hand sanitizer. Sounds simple, but think of connectivity and letting you know how other people are doing. There's also models out there that have been proven to be effective on things like listening to a cough and hearing that cough may be from a person who has contracted COVID versus a cough of a person who has some other ailment. The models have become better at even predicting that. The IoT world, the connected world, it's all about how we use those models and bring those closer to the problem while preserving privacy and being aware of the ethical issues, but still providing the value of early detection. So it happens also with contract chasing and other places like that, where you want to understand how did something happen proactively.
And one of the most important things in any of those use cases is you really need to have a systematic approach to deliver that value. So defining the use cases is really not about what data do I have available, how do I use it. It is really, what problem we're trying to solve. Like Brian was saying, when we started looking at COVID, everybody was thinking about thermal cameras, checking your temperature, right? As our learning evolved, we started looking at different types of capabilities that not only allow to reduce the risk of somebody contracting or spreading COVID, but also how you can improve efficiency in a facility. How can you advertise through the hand sanitizers? Because now new opportunities come up. Now the data, if it's available, and understanding how to leverage that investment is really, really important. So when we start the process and create this program, the idea is not to create a point solution, but enable a capability that clients can use, because once you have the data and you have the processes and they're reliable and secure, there are a number of different capabilities that can be used. And the talent that we want to bring into those projects, they need to be prepared to leverage this. So again, going back to the one cloud, sometimes you have to bring somebody that knows how to manage Kubernetes on a device. Sometimes you need to understand how to deal with, video analytics or temperatures or, sounds to be able to do cough analytics. So the talent is really important. And because of this agile model, we're really talking about building out a set of capabilities with technology and the teams to be able to expand the use cases and the value that you have defined. And once you start the work and create this particular pilot, again, the objectives that you're trying to achieve are very important. There are some key metrics that we need to have on technology For instance, in one case, you have to measure vibration into a device. There are very specific technical requirements for us to meet, not just in terms of what data do we have and what the frequency would be, but also have we checked with cyber, can this data actually get out of that system into the cloud? Do we have the firewalls and everything else needs to be done? So the idea of the program, the pilot program, is to make sure that everything that's necessary to deliver that value is put in place. But again, not as a proof of concept, but as a working solution that we can then operationalize by expanding to other areas. Several of our customers, they have started in one area, collecting one type of data, doing some type of analysis. And over time, they expand in terms of use cases, in terms of locations, in terms of the process that need to be defined. So the idea of creating this roadmap and self-funding most of this journey, because as you create value in one pilot, that money can be reinvested either to improve some of the processes, develop new applications, develop new data science on top of it. But the idea is always improving. So this fully digitalization of the company, which is really this, creating value out of digital data that you're embedding into the systems, can be, fully achieved in the company. And one of the critical things, especially as a global integrator like ATOS, is we don't do this alone, right? We have several partners that are common in a lot of our clients, especially on the cloud space with the hyperscalers. We have a very strong relationship with Google. There is a lot of projects that we did together. There's a lot of expertise, especially on the Maven Wave team. And we don't have just a commercial relationship with those companies. We have sometimes a co-development as well. So, for instance, with the data collection that we have in this IoT space, Dell Technologies has been, a critical partner, not only to be able to help us with devices and software and capabilities, but also to work with us in the roadmap. So the value that we bring to our clients and their clients can be realized. And most of the work that we do with those partners is really designed to improve what we bring into the clients, right? Of course, there is a commercial objective that we have of working with them. But at the end of the day, if we're not solving a business problem for our clients, we're not doing our job. So very rich set of partners. We always keep working with new ones. As a GSI, we are here for the client. So there is a lot of relationships that are brought in by our clients. In fact, in the predictive maintenance space, one of our largest clients, they have a lot of simulation software for things like digital twin that we have started relationships with some of those companies in the behalf of this client so they can get the benefit.
So, I'd like to open up we have a few minutes left. Is it an option to ask some questions? I don't know if there's any questions from the audience or not. Otherwise, we can stop a little bit early if not. Maybe just a bit on how to interact or how to interact with Maven Wave and ATOS. Reach out to Paulo and myself if you're interested in anything you saw today. Here's our emails. And we're happy to talk with enterprise clients, especially those who are interested in scaling in the cloud, scaling into IoT, who are ready for that digital transformation. Like I said, there's a bit of change that comes with it, but ultimately the survivors of this system will be the ones who are able to adapt quickly to it. Like I said, a lot of places, they just simply do not know where to start. And we can help facilitate that conversation as well. Which use case should you take to the cloud first? Which one will provide the most business benefit in the short term, as well as fit into your budget and your timeline and things like that. Regarding partnerships, I know there's other partners on here, partnerships and arrangements like that. We work just fine as hybrid teams, and we can work with alliances. We can work in various ways in order to accelerate in the cloud, as we have for a decade. Anything to add to that, Paul?
Yeah, it's just also the nature of the global business. A lot of our clients, they have global operations, and we have capabilities around the globe, not just with our teams, but with our partner teams. And sometimes the challenge of getting to the be able to staff in either onshore and offshore for a lot of those complex projects creates a barrier. So again, in terms of which devices that we collect data, where this data needs to be processed, what strategy from a cloud and edge the client would have, and where this needs to be deployed. There was an example about oil fields. Think about how remote those systems are, and be able to dispatch individuals that not only would be able to install but also maintain that equipment is a critical capability. And those are the things that historically has been what ATOS is known for, and we are transforming ourselves. We're adapting it to leverage the cloud as a new set of capabilities. So that's one of the kind of key differentiations that we need to see in this space, because the more and more systems and use cases that is starting to show, you need to be able to scale your organization and your partners on that as well.
Great. And where to find us? I know Paulo and myself, we both are on LinkedIn. I know that Paulo posts some interesting things, a lot of interesting things, and I try to as well sometimes. So thank you very much for having us. This was really great to be able to get in front of you today, this morning. It is Thanksgiving holiday for the U.S. this week, so a lot of luckily we have the time and the energy, but we want to be thankful for our relationship with our global relationships with folks in Mexico and everywhere, really. So there's a lot of problems to be solved out there, and this is some great technology available to solve these problems. So we hope to work together to do that.
Thank you very much, Brian and Paulo. I just have a bit of a question. Here, some of the people are asking if you have a case of success inside health with AI, with this. Now that we're talking with COVID-19.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
I mean, yeah. So one area we've been doing a lot in the COVID space from the AI perspective is we do what's called a cloud ML workshop. And we take the data scientists, we did one for Sanofi recently, it's a public qualification. We did one for Fulcrum Therapeutics. And we spent a several-week workshop taking their data scientists and showing them how to use the cloud, basically. So how to solve the same problems that they would solve with limited technology hardware, and then now use a scalable infrastructure using things like TensorFlow and things like that. Paulo, do you have an example?
Yes, and COVID has been a very interesting journey for us because when we started, like I said, a lot of attention was with thermal cameras to be able to take temperatures automatically, and you're going to see in a lot of places, in a lot of hospitals and providers, that is still the case. But then the day-to-day about, monitor for PPE, for masks and gloves and other things, be able to, do contact tracing. How do you collect the data without invading privacy? So we have developed a series of capabilities depending on the type of facility. Some places they have cameras that you can use. Some places you have to instrument with wearables that collect data, but do not provide any kind of identification from the user. And sometimes it's basically a cell phone. So again, because of a variety of data collection that you're going to have, another set of use cases are coming up. As an example, one of the ones that we're discussing right now is if we can monitor patients in a hospital setting, why not monitor for falls? Because this is actually a big ongoing risk. Hopefully the pandemic is going to go away and all this enablement that we have done in terms of capability are going to be used for other types of capabilities. So if you look at in a fall risk scenario, the ratio of nurse to patients is very high because somebody falls, you have to actually have the nurse monitoring that patient in the bed. With this instrumentation, you can see when they're trying to stand up to go to the restroom or something like that, and we can send alerts. Just the same way that we have alerts to fix a roller coaster, we can have alerts to say dispatch a nurse, dispatch an orderly, because somebody needs to go to the restroom and it's a fall risk, right? So there are a number of different ways to solve for this. And one of the things that's coming up of large interest is with telemedicine. How do you monitor the patient at home, right? A lot of folks not wanting to go to the hospital right now, trying to minimize risk. So a lot of that technology is also being used to improve, care from a distance.
Sounds great. Another question they asking is, what do you see in the future for Latin America for AI?
So, I mean, Paulo, you would be the best to answer that question.
Yeah, I come from Brazil, and we know that in Latin America we usually lag a little bit. We see a lot of developments happening in the U.S., but one of the things that Latin America has a lot is innovation, right? Especially when the challenges arise with the costs and the social issues that we have. We expect a lot of interesting ideas and solutions to come up just because it's the nature of the need, right? And I have seen, especially in Brazil, a lot of companies coming up with local problems or local solutions for local problems that eventually is going to help bring capabilities across the world. And one in particular was actually very interesting. There is a discussion we have with the Panama Canal to be able to instrument the canal for a number of different things, including COVID. And the sheer size and complexity and the nature of the workers in that space brought us a new set of requirements for us that we had to go define and adapt. So I expect a lot of that innovation to come from the local teams, because until you actually know the problem, designing a solution is really not an option.
I had a different use case too. I had a couple Latin American newspapers come to me and ask if we could help them with digitizing some of their media, tagging it. We did that for Gannett here in the States, where we took a lot of their archives and we moved them, tagged them, and made them available for quick search, and also understanding the copyright and the context and stuff like that. So I think that just general digitizing things, moving to the digital world as for some places, but I think it varies greatly. There's a lot more to come. There's absolutely a lot more to come.
Perfect. Well, Thank you very much. Everything was very interesting. I think this type of speeches and this type of presentation are great for us here in Latin America and for everyone that is listening. And well, nothing much more than we're grateful for you to be here, and thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Go.
Thank you.
Queremos recordarles que al final de el último ponente llevaremos a cabo, gracias a BG2 Services, una rifa para poder